I'm Maggie from the blog Back to the Land Living, and in today's video I want to share with you our garden harvest that we're doing tonight. So the last few days here in New Brunswick we have had a frost at nighttime, and so we think it's about time we clean up what's left in our garden. We've had a lot we've eaten fresh during the year, but I thought I'd bring you along and show you what we're harvesting and give you a little tour of our garden as we go along. So to begin with, we're going to start with our squashes and our pumpkins. And so as you can see here, they're up on a trellis this year. We built this spring, and if you want to check out how I built it, I'll leave a link to my blog post all about that. But we really like how it's been working out. It has got all of our squash and our pumpkins up off the ground, and they haven't rotted or anything because they've been nice and aerated. And also, it's just really easy to see them and go through and prune and things like that. So we're really happy with this. So to begin with, we're going to harvest our pumpkins. So they are on this side of our trellis. So we're going to go through and harvest the ones that are ripe. The ones that have not turned orange yet, we're going to leave on. Even though it has frosted, they won't ripen off the vine. And so we're going to leave them hoping for some more sunny days, and hopefully they will orange up. And the ones that are ripe and have hardened up, we're going to prune off, take off, and we're going to store them. So let's go get started. Harvest this pumpkin first, and I know this pumpkin is ready because when I take my fingernail and push in with it, it doesn't break the skin. It's nice and hard, it's nice and orange, and also the vine is starting to die off and it's darkened up here on the stem. So I'm going to cut it back as far as I can closest to the vine, because the longer stem you leave, the less chance it's going to rot on you. And so I'm going to harvest this one and I'll keep going. So next we're going to harvest our squash. So on this side of the trellis we have our squashes. This type here, I'm not sure what it's called. I'll put on the screen what the name of it is, but we call them potato squash, and they're really delicious. And so I'm going to come through and harvest these. We also have another type that's similar to them, and they look almost like a little gourd, but they're also a squash, and I'll put the name of these ones on the screen as well because I don't remember them, but we really like them. They're delicious. I recommend trying them if you haven't. They've grown actually pretty well for us. We only planted a couple plants, and we have quite a few fruit on them. So I'm going to go harvest these, and then I'll be harvesting my buttercup, butternut, and sweet mama squash. So these are the butternut squash. We just have a couple butternuts this year. We didn't even know what plant it was going to be because a friend just gave it to us, but they turned out to get a couple nice little butternuts off it. And then next we have our sweet mama squash. We also only have a couple sweet mama squash because they didn't come that great, but we love these squashes, so we'll probably buy some at our local market because they are stored so well for the winter. So we have a couple and we're really happy about it. This big one. Ooh, it's a huge one. Look how big it is. So I'm really happy with this one. It's big, only a few, but we'll definitely eat a lot of these. This will keep for months and months. It'll keep until after Christmas for sure. Another sweet mama, a little bit discolored, but still good. There's one more up here. So now we're going to harvest the rest of our buttercup, and then we'll head over and harvest some other vegetables in the garden. Doesn't fit through. There. So now I'm going to harvest my sunflowers. So we only grew a couple of these this year. It's the first time we've ever grown them, and we really like them. They brought a lot of bees to our garden, and also they're just really beautiful. And the reason we wanted to grow them is for their seeds, just because Eric, my husband, really likes snacking on sunflower seeds, so we thought, why not grow them ourselves? And so now that the leaves, or the petals, have all fallen off, and they're drooping down, it's time to harvest them. And so what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to snip back here a little ways. I could have gone farther probably there. And what we'll do is we'll take and brush off, and underneath here is where the seeds will be. And so we're going to hang this up to dry out, and then after they're dried out a bit, we'll harvest the seeds and we'll store those and have them to eat for the year. So I'm going to harvest all of the heads here and hang them up to dry in our woodshed. So the next thing I'm going to harvest is our tomatoes. These tomatoes are still green. We've taken all of the red ones off, and I've made salsa and canned tomatoes, tomato sauce, and things like that. But since the frost is coming, we want to harvest the rest of these tomatoes so they don't go bad, and we'll just put them in our house, and they'll ripen up on the counter in there, and I'll use them after they've ripened. So this summer we grew quite a few different varieties of tomatoes, a lot more than we had last year. So we have some that are paste tomatoes. We did Amish paste tomato and San Marino tomatoes and a couple others, I forget the names of them. And we really like those for making sauces because they're a lot thicker and they have less water in them, and so they make a nice sauce. And so we grew a bunch of different varieties and have really enjoyed that. I think next year we'll grow even more of the paste tomatoes because we found we use quite a few of those. So behind me here, behind the tomatoes, is our corn, and we actually got our garden in really late this year. We were building, this is a new garden for us, it's a new setup, and we got everything in pretty late, so actually like the beginning of July, and so everything mostly came decently well. Some things were a bit of a failure, as everyone has a few failures every year, and some things were a success, like our tomatoes were pretty good, but our corn is actually really late. So if we pull a piece back, it's very white still. I'll pour a little back and show you that it's still white. And so we want the corn to be yellow because it's peaches and cream, and even though the frost is coming, we're going to leave it on and just hope it ripens up. Next year we definitely need to get it in earlier in the ground, but if it doesn't ripen up and it's not edible for us, we'll feed it to our pigs so it doesn't completely go to waste, but we're hoping that the frost will hold off and not being too heavy, and these will be able to ripen up for us so we can have some corn this year. But if not, it won't go to waste, we'll go to the pigs. But I'm going to finish up harvesting these tomatoes, and then we're going to go over to our little other garden and show you our last thing we're going to finish harvesting today. So this is our little garden. We have two gardens, and this one we planted on time, which was nice, so everything developed pretty well, and we actually have a lot already harvested. So behind me here was a row of carrots. We still have a few of those to harvest, but they'll last in the ground. With a few frosts, it'll be fine, so we're going to leave them as long as we can out here until our storage room gets nice and cold. And then behind that we had our onions, which never came very well, but we got a few off, and we've hung them up in the woodshed to dry out. And then behind me, the last row is our potatoes, and those are still in the ground. We've been eating those fresh all summer, and we just love new potatoes. And we'll be harvesting those also later on when we do the carrots, because we need the room to get nice and cold since it's not actually a root cellar. If you're interested in where we store our root crops, I'll leave a link to the video I did last year all about storing our food without a root cellar. But for tonight, we're going to be harvesting our beets. So the beets are probably one of our best successes this year. I'll pull one up here and show you how big they are. This is one of our beets. This is actually one of our smaller beets. Most of our beets are even larger than this. I harvested one just for us to eat for supper the other night, and it was enough for 2 meals. It was huge. So I know that a lot of people say the larger the beet, the less sweet it is or the more bitter it is, but we're planning on making these all into pickles because we found last year that we stored a bucket full of beets and we never ate them because my husband doesn't really like them that much, and I wasn't going to just make them for myself. So we found the pickled beets, we ate out of all of those, and we never ate the ones that were just stored fresh like this. And so I don't really care that they're a little bit bitter because I'm going to be adding sugar to them when I make them into pickles. But we actually had one this size, or actually larger than this, for supper the other night, and I just roasted it up with some seasonings in the oven, and it was just fine, and we really liked it. So we're super happy with how big our beets have gotten, and we're going to harvest those, and then I'll be making them into beet pickles later on this week. So I'm going to harvest this row, and I'll show you how many I have when I'm all done. So these are all the beets that we got this year, and we ate a couple already, and so I'm really happy. We didn't plant that many because we don't eat that many, but I'll be making these into lots of pickles for us. Probably have to give a few bottles away, there's going to be so many. And so we're really happy with this harvest. I hope you've enjoyed this harvest tour and a little garden tour. We've really enjoyed our gardening season this year, and so from here on out, we're going to be, this garden will be plowing it back down, tilling it up, and leaving it till next year. I still have to plant my garlic in this garden actually, because that will be planted in the fall to be ready for next summer. And then in our other garden, we'll be mulching back up the beds. Before we do that, we'll be taking out all of the greens that's left over, putting that in the compost pile, and we'll just be wrapping it all up for the winter until next season to plant some more. And so we've had a great gardening season. Hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are interested in more homesteading, gardening, pickling, things like that, we'd love to have you subscribe, follow us along. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.